Anyway, welcome to today's class. It's the second in the debate of the basics of calculation. And today we're going to talk about System 1 and System 2. I'm giving you this little position as a teaser. And you probably already started thinking, and we'll get back to that. Just the normal reminders. When you use the chat, go to all panelists, which today is only myself, and don't include other participants unless you want to say something to the other participants, and don't let it be what to play in any position. I'm asked if it is cold where I'm staying. It is relative. From an Indian perspective, yes. So Surya, I know one person called Surya. I assume it is not he, because it's definitely cold where he is, because he's playing in Vaikansee right now. So I think there are absolutely 0 points to come up with the first move here. The second move, most people will get the right move intuitively, but then maybe struggle a little bit with a follow-up, or they will get the second best move, which is much, much worse, and not see the defense. And that is what we're going to come back to. I'm going to move to a slide today just to frame today's topic briefly. Okay, so I go to share and here. So, okay, so basis of calculation, 2 out of 13. So today we're talking about System 1 and System 2 and the importance of slowing down. And System 1 and System 2 is something that's familiar to most people through the work of Daniel Kahneman. It's a very, very interesting Israeli American psychologist. He would probably say Israeli, even though he has lived in America more than in Israel, I think. There's this huge bestseller, Thinking Fast and Slow. Well, that's one of the many things he included in it. He's very famous in psychology for his work with Daniel Tversky, and there's a very, very fascinating book written about the two guys work together called The Undoing Project. I think there was a problem with this slide for a moment. Okay. I have problems seeing your chat for some reason. So I'm just going to go through this little 3-4 minute abstract, and then we can go to questions and comments, and I'll look for the chat then. So System 1 and System 2 is what we in chess call intuition and concentration. So let's have the definitions I gave for these in my book, Thinking Inside the Box. So System 1 is fast, automatic, frequent, emotional, stereotypical, and subconscious. It handles all the things we already know how to do. So we could also call this pattern recognition. And sometimes it's rather abstract patterns we recognize. And this is the reason why when we are in certain situations, we always have one or two options for free, so to say. And in chess, when we look at the board, we see some options. I normally talk about looking at the board and seeing things as looking into a mirror. What we see on the chessboard is ourselves in that reflection. So it's not a perfect mirror. In one of the oldest pieces of literature, the Bible, they talk about seeing yourself unclear as in a mirror, because back then mirror technology was very poor. And sort of the chessboard is the same way. We see ourselves, but it's a very poor reflection and it needs interpretation. But of course, the chessboard is not a mirror. The fact that we see our chess knowledge when reflected or interpreted by a chess position doesn't mean that we see all the right things. The better we become, the better our automatic options are, our free options, our pattern recognition. When you talk to the best players in the world who have studied chess for many, many, many thousands of hours, and have a really good talent for understanding it and for drawing these kind of patterns, you see some amazing quick understanding of things. What we often have is that children will have a very good tactical intuition, while for adults the tactical intuition subsides and the positional intuition emerges as stronger. It's a good starting point, it's a great strength, but it's not always the superior thing. And intuition can be very move based, as I said, tactical intuition, patterns. The most famous example is Michael Tal, who from looking at position would see all these wild variations, but he was not very good at calculation, which I will get back to. He was just amazingly creative. And some players who were decent at calculation, like Bogierski and Korchnoi, they beat him consistently, while most other players who were more good at positional chess, they couldn't contain him. Okay, so this is system one. This is what we call intuition. It's the things that come for free. We don't have to do anything for it. It just comes when we look. The more we look, the more patterns we can recognize. Our brain needs time to work, like an engine, like a slow engine. Sometimes I refer to my brain as Fritz 0.03. Okay, system two is slow, effortful, infrequent, logical, calculating, and conscious. When we try to solve unusual and complex problems, we use the brain in this way. The brain is very reluctant to turn to this way of thinking, as it requires us to stop everything else we're currently working on. So when we talk system one, intuition, we can, play blitz and talk and look out the window and all these kind of things at the same time. We're not concentrating. Concentrating, remember, means removing everything unnecessary. We're not doing that. On the contrary, we're letting everything in. So we rely on our patterns, our intuition, our automatic systems. It's very subconscious, which means it happens without our specific steering. When we're talking system two, which is concentration, we're trying very, very deliberately to steer our mind in a certain direction. And in chess, that often is most beneficial when we have situations where we need to calculate variations, because there the imprecise, let's say, machine gun, a blind man with a machine gun, or a guy without any knowledge of how a machine gun works, can just point it in the right direction and shoot, and it'll sort of hit in the right area, and And that's how intuition works and pattern recognition works to a great extent. While for system 2, we have to be very focused and very clear. And this is the sharpshooter, the hitting the target from 500 meters or more away, you know, hitting the middle of the coin 500 meters away, or whatever we're thinking about in superhero terms. In those situations, we know from the sharpshooters that they need focus, slowing down so they are in control of the process. Being in control of the process is very important, and that's why we're going to talk about slowing down. And also, as I'm saying here, the brain is reluctant to turn to this way of thinking. We have to force the brain to concentrate. As we know that in concentration, we are eliminating everything unnecessary. We have to really control our mind. And the best way we can do that is to slow down. So I have this little mantra I say is stop, slow down, get in control of the situation, consider your options, and then go. Okay. So when we talk about slowing down, we're talking very much about candidate moves. And this is also a quote from Thinking Inside the Box. So the technique of candidate moves being the act of actively looking for moves or ideas you do not see automatically. We talked about this in last session as well. In excelling at calculation, I recommended that the way we do this was to slow down the variations running through your head in order to be in control of the process. I did not know then that I was recommending activating System 2 in order to find options additional to those provided by System 1 thinking, our intuition. There are a few changes I made to this quote, and I could probably have made it better for this session. But again, we have, so I want to underline this part. The act of actively looking for moves or ideas we do not automatically see. And this is really what it's down. And the way we do that is slow down. And for example, a lot of you will be active in the homework club, and you will be solving exercises there. And I've seen some action somewhere. So they're divided into 3 pages, as you know. The first page, there's some tactics of increasing difficulty. Page 2, it's mixed, mainly raw decision making, where I want you to train your ability to make decisions. For some people who have problem with time trouble, that's very important. So I give you a certain amount of time based on your rating, and you should generally, I think, there are many ways to play chess, but I think you should decide to spend your time mainly on the 1 or 2 positions that need calculation. And the others, you should find out which decisions you can just make reasonable guesses. It's very difficult to make 6 out of 6. It's very difficult to play perfect games, but we should train in. And then on the 3rd page, I usually give you some very difficult problems, not necessarily only difficult problems, but there's some very difficult problems, which is aimed mainly at the strongest players on our website, which we have, 2,600 players, and they also do the work. And I want everyone to try who wants to try. If you feel it's above, it's too much, you don't have to do page 3. But in that page, it's important that you slow down so you're in control of your thought process. And it doesn't matter if it takes you 2 hours to work on a position. It's just like when you're running, the first 100 times you're running 5K, you might run it in an hour or more if you're in my shape. But that's not your end time. You don't have to try to run as if you can run it in 30 minutes or 25 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever your you're going to end up with at the beginning, that's not what you're doing. You're training slowly to get to a position where you can move faster. And that's also what we're trying to do when we train calculation. We have to be in control of the process. So let's close this slide. And then I go back to the position and go here. There seems to be a little more technical hitches today than usual. I'm not going to panic. So here. Good. So yeah, I understand that that popped in and out and you had problems seeing. So we're going to turn to some increasingly difficult positions, and we're going to balance it between a bit of solving and a bit of talking about what's actually going on when we're solving. And this is the moment I remember we didn't put out the bins today, and we will have to keep them for the next 2 weeks, which is unfortunate, especially since we only live in this house for another week. So in this position, it's obviously black to play. I have remembered to flip the board. And black is in check, which is always helpful. The first move is not so difficult to see. Rook takes e6, and then rook takes e6. By that point, black has 2 options. And most people only see one. They see one, think it works, and that's it. So first of all, after rook takes e6, rook takes e6, what are black's 2 options? So just write both moves, please. Take a minute, no more. Get typing. Do you ask for you're missing a move? Like, yes, you're right. Ashwini, you're right. Srikumar, I need 2 moves for black. Srinath, the first of the 2 second moves you mentioned is not the right one. Yoga, the same with you. The second move you mentioned is not the second candidate. Seems people are finding a third candidate consistently here. You're right, Boris. Okay, so after rook takes e6, rook takes e6, black should consider both captures on f2. So let's go through a calculation process where we go slow enough to be in control. Since this is Saturday morning for me, that means quite slow. So rook takes e6, rook takes e6, and let's start with bishop takes f2. It's in my nature to start with a check. If rook takes, then queen takes d1 will be fine. So that leaves us other options. So king h1, what happens after king h1? Ashwini was fastest there, queen a8 check. So that is not so difficult. Okay, what happens then after a move like, let's say, king h2? So Lakshya's was fastest, but not best. Yoga found the right move. I'm going to give you time to look here. Lakshya has now found the best move. So just repeating rook e6, bishop takes f2, king h2. Back to play. And Boris has the right move. Trostman has the right move. TSV does not have the right move. Becomes very messy. Look again. So we're going to take the last few seconds here. Sri Kumar also does not have the right move. So Dog with an E does not have the right move either. Srinath does not have the right. No, just to make sure you understand the moves here. We're talking it's rook e6, bishop f2, and king h2 immediately, and then black to play. The Yashvi is still not getting it. Okay, I'm gonna make, rather than just saying the solution, I'm gonna make it a little bit difficult for you guys. Sorry, that's not a little bit difficult, a little bit easier here. Black to play. Hopefully there will be a lot of aha moments. People here seeing the best move. It's not bishop d4, bishop h4, queen h4, bishop g3. It's natural to look for bishop moves. This is again where the patterns, different people have different patterns. I think most GMs would see this very, very instantly. It's nice to see that the chess base is auto-saving things here. While for others, they're maybe so focused on the king here that they forget to see other moves. Bishop g1, I think, fails to king takes g1, queen g5, queen g4. And you're going to end the rook down. So this is a moment where we give it away. So check, and now the white queen is undefended. So for some of you, this was very easy, and it came quite quickly, and some of you struggled. And you know, we have different places in chess and so on. There's nothing really negative I want to say about that at all. We all develop at our own pace, and we start not at the same time. The point I want to make with that is, however, the process is the same for everyone. Because let's try to go back a little bit here. So it's very good to start from the starting position. We try to have the calculation happening in our head and not on the board, because this is one winning line. But there is, in my experience, this used to be, I gave it out as a reasonably easy exercise, and then I found out that about 1 in 5, they find a different idea. And first time I came across it, I thought this also just wins. But it's not so simple. So here it's rook takes e6, rook takes e6, and then rook takes f2. It looks very similar. If rook takes, bishop takes check, and queen takes queen. But after, and I'm going to put this on the board because this is the easy, friendly example. After this here, white actually has a way to continue the game. So I'm going to give you 1-2 minutes to look. Let's see, what can white do? So rook e8 is suggested. Can you see yourself why rook e8, even though it's check, doesn't work? So not rook e8. Queen d4 is suggested. I think also if you slow down, this is the same process with everyone. We start with an idea, and then we look for the things we don't automatically see. Queen takes d4. Don't go too fast. Troostman correctly points out why rook e8 doesn't work. Srekumar, you can probably see yourself why queen takes d4 doesn't work. The way for us to get the intuition where these things come automatically is actually we first go through the process of finding them slowly. Yoga, you found the right move. That's excellent. So we're going to give another minute here. White to play and not lose immediately. So queen b3 is suggested. I think rook b2 check. It's very important not to play rook f3 check, because then white has rook e3 check, but rook b2 check. And after rook e3, we have rook takes b3. So the position really looks entirely lost for white. King h1 is suggested. Queen d5 or queen a8 check will lead to mate. Troostman has found the right move. And Srinath has found the right move. I think this is time for us to move on. So the right move, Boris found the right move also. Maybe it helped a little bit the queen b3 variation. That was sort of my hope. So rook e3. I think here the right move for black is a queen g5 check. And then after, I'm trying to remember. This is where I have to think. No, queen g5, we have king takes f2. So I have to now remember. Yeah, okay, we just take an e3 because I was thinking queen d8 check, but of course rook f8 check is the same blunder as was made earlier. We always have these things, and that could be a discussion for another day about the problems with intuitions, the limitations of intuition. That even though things we do know, we tend to not see them automatically all the time. We have a selection process that I don't think is very well understood at all, where we focus on one or two things, even though there might be 6 things we understand in the situation. So we just randomly feel our way for what is most important. Yeah, so after bishop e3, then of course check, as mentioned. And here I am not sure at all where the king should go. Let's say we go king f8 and queen e3 and check and check. And I put this this endgame in a program called Final Gen at some point. I think now we can put it in a normal engine. We'll be told that it is winning for black in something like 77 moves or something like this. I once had a queen ending in a league match that afterwards I found out was winning in 97 moves. But okay. So here, again, we saw this process in a very simple environment where the tactics were actually not so difficult to understand, but we saw that there is always something we don't really see. And if you went through the last homework club, you would know that exercise 16 was a one mover, so to speak, but it was the most difficult exercise in the whole sheet. Okay, so let's, I'll just, I will just do Control New and not save. And we'll bring this one in. Here and here. Okay, this position here is from my book, Grandmaster Preparation Calculation. And I'm not just giving you positions from the book to save the energy of finding new positions. Actually, this used to be an exercise in the book in the first 4 editions. But in the 5th edition, where I have just finished my work and we just need to go through a final proofreading and the slight change to the cover is going to be published in hardback in a month or something. It's normally what's 4 to 6 weeks, the physical process. I guess it will be sent to the printer next week, and then it will be in our warehouse 4 weeks later. So I went through the whole book again with an engine, and our friend Renier Castellanos, he also helped me going through the positions. And we found a lot of corrections. Previously, I had somewhere between 5 and 10 exercises that had been replaced in the book, and this time I replaced 8. I made changes to another 25 minor details here and there. I then also added another 24 exercises and so on. So if anyone is thinking about maybe buying the book at some point, you can wait these 5-6 weeks. If you already have the book on forward chess, I'm pretty sure that our friends there will be happy to just update the book, so you can simply, it should sort of automatically update. And if you already have the book, you should just be happy with what you have. There's a few very deep mistakes that we found that computers didn't find in 2017, but they found now. And you know, it's not going to make a difference to your life or to your chess. The extra chapter was nice, but then, you know, I'm going to publish other books. Other people have published very nice exercise books. So it was more a marketing thing, but very nice thing to do. So here, black to play. I was white in this game against Douglas Bryson, who's an international master from Scotland, and is the player I have played most game with by far. We played maybe 20 times. And although I have been in danger a few times, I have not lost to him yet. So I have probably a score of 8 wins and 12 draws or something like this. And we had a lot of fascinating games, and he really tries to go for me. So one day he will get me, for sure, but not yet. So here it's about ideas. And the thing with this position I found interesting was I had an idea originally for a solution, which was based on a sacrifice by black. And like, yes, he suggests the move, and rather than making this into a solving lesson, I'll say, okay, let's look at your move. You suggest bishop takes f2. And I hope you can all hear me, because I'm going to do a lot of this verbally. So bishop takes f2, check. Now, there's no reason to play king h1. White can take on f2. Rook takes f2. what's your next move? Bishop takes f2 feels like an exercise move. Looks right. But what is your next move? Because this is a position where it's easy to give up your extra piece and win back the pawn, but you don't solve your problems. So you have to actually have an understanding of what's happening. You have to go from idea to variation. Eventually, when I publish my book on calculation, I'm planning to write one. It's going to be called Beyond Imagination, because imagination is just seeing ideas and so on. It's of course very important. And here we have two suggestions of follow-up. We have bishop takes f2, rook takes f2, and knight g4. And those who have seen it already will know that bishop takes d7 check, followed by bishop takes g4. Will leave white a rook and a knight up. We have another suggestion, which is bishop takes f2, rook takes f2, rook takes d1. And I'm going to object. Your rook on d7 is pinned. So let's not go down those two roads. So we have Troostman has another suggestion. Bishop takes f2, rook takes f2. Then we have two suggestions here. We have Troostman's castles, and we have Lakia's knight e4. Knight e4, I still come with bishop takes d7 check. And then we have, I presume, king e7. And that's an interesting position. And I think it's dog e will suggest castles. I assume we're all talking about the position after bishop takes f2, rook takes f2, castles. There's this thing in calculation where you should try to see if you can put the move orders around. And usually this will give you some good ideas. For example, in this position, I am wondering about this knight takes e4 directly. I am skeptical, I have to say, about it. But I do not see an immediate refutation. And if I was sitting down to think for 10 minutes, maybe I could. So we're gonna leave that to the Facebook group after the lesson. I'm going to think myself and see what I have, and anyone who engaged with the discussion there, please engage without engines. My feeling is something like bishop takes d7 check, king e7, and then some fancy move like knight d4 might be giving a wild winning attack in very complex ways. For example, knight f2, there's maybe knight f5 check, king d8, and bishop e6 check, and that looks entirely mate to my eyes. And if king f6, rook d6 check. But after knight d4, I would say black can also think, and that's what I like most about chess, is the thinking part of it. I would think e d4, queen b4, but again, I would want to slow down so that I know I'm actually seeing everything before I make any decisions. I want to be in control. But I like this idea of bishop f2, rook f2, and castles. Now, black will be okay if white doesn't play bishop takes d7. This is quite easy to see. And black only has one relevant move after bishop takes d7, which is knight takes e4, threatening and take on f2. White again, we can look at moves like knight d4, but after knight f2 it doesn't work. After knight takes e4, we have rook d f1. And not necessarily knight takes f2 immediately, but let's say why not? Knight takes f2 and rook takes f2. And I'm going to give you 1 minute to think for a move there, and then I'm going to put it on the board. So you see the process of finding moments where you look for ideas and try to find out how to do that. So this definitely went from basic to the complex. So the variation, bishop takes f2 check, rook takes f2, castles, bishop takes d7, knight takes e4, rook df1, knight f2, rook f2, a good move for black there. And Doc E, it's got it. And there's a lot of people suggesting the same move, which is rook a8. You'll probably see that white has to play queen d1. Do you have an idea after queen d1? So rook a8, queen d1. Boris, you found the move. Trostman, sorry. It's not the strongest move. I think black still has reasonable drawing chances after queen takes b2, but Lakes also queen takes b2. I think black can play knight g3 or something like this. Or there's a few options. Potentially bishop a4. Black has 2 pawns and certainly drawing chances because there's not many pawns left, but I'm not sure bishop a4. Maybe black has bishop c6. Actually, that's a funny line. So okay, let's go through the moves here. I'm always very cautious of not going too fast, but there's also a danger of going too slow, I think. So bishop takes f2 check. And Yoga, you found it. And rook takes. And castles. I do believe this is stronger than king e7. We'll put king e7 in the Facebook group as promised. Bishop d7, knight e4. And rook f1. And then knight f2. Rook f2 and rook a8. And queen d1. And here, it's very tempting to have moves like queen b2. So as I was saying, I think something like knight g3 and white should be somewhat better. I sort of got fascinated with this variation for a moment, and I stopped a bit too fast here, and then I realized maybe this move. It doesn't work because the bishop on c6 is hanging, which I didn't see at the time. I didn't give myself the time. Again, slow down so you make sure you see things. Here I'm trying to talk to you guys more than see things. So here the difficult thing from seeing in advance for such a position would be to see that black has this move rook d8. And usually, when should you look after ideas and variations? Because we don't want to play this, get to this position, and find out that there's nothing here. So we want to see things in advance. That's what calculation is about. It's decision making. We just need to have a lot of information before we make decisions that include piece sacrifices and stuff like that. Sometimes we do it on intuition, but generally we prefer to do it on knowledge. So in this this position here, black has to move rook d8. So Trostman was refuting my line. I think Queen b2 will also go to the Facebook group. I'm trying to avoid getting trapped down in analyzing everything in one position, because we still have some things I want to show. But anyway, this here after Queen a4 and Rook a8, this used to be the old solution in the book Calculation, and I think it's a very beautiful solution for black. I agree that Queen takes b2 is interesting. When we look at something like this from afar, there's a number of ways to make decisions. First of all, if we go back to the starting position, I want to underline again, calculation is about decision making. We only want to calculate as far as it helps us with our decision. In the game, Douglas, he played King d8, and after bishop d7, 97, 94, white was much better. I messed up, I didn't win the game. This can happen. But when we see this variation of bishop takes f2 and castle, maybe we think our position is under a lot of strain. We see this variation, we have rook a8, and then we have options, and we don't really feel control at the end. But we think at least I have queen b2, and if nothing else, I get two pawns and actual play for the piece, and you know, it's a good practical chance. That would be an absolute fair way of making decisions. So after Queen b2, what white should play is, as we found out, not so absolutely obvious, because I was pointed out knight g3, rook a1, rook b2, rook d1 check, and rook takes d7. It looks very good for black also, with two extra pawns. So the reason why I removed this exercise from the book is that actually black has another very strong possibility in this position. So if we look for ideas, then usually, I talked about this before and I will talk about it again, usually the problems in calculation arise when we miss things on the first few moves. So we should do the normal feeling, this is a really critical moment, so we should sort of go in for where are the weaknesses, maybe king, what's the opponent's idea, so these are the two ideas. What's the worst place piece? Well, it's not sure white has a worst place piece, but it's definitely this for black. Where does the worst place piece belong? Well, we already kind of worked that out. It's here. So this kind of analysis for me, you can see it comes very quickly. I look at a position and I can see these things very quickly. It comes from experience. So when we do it like this, and this is again when I talk about the shortcomings of intuition, we do get these extra ideas. And of course, we want to put the worst place piece into the game, so we want to play rook a8, and you know, okay, castles and bishop takes d7, then after rook a8, queen b5. So for that reason, you can castle, bishop d7, bishop takes f2, and that's actually no difference from what we already looked at. But as Doug suggested, black can also play king e7. Now, king e7 is obviously threatening to be a piece up immediately. Again, back to the thing about critical moves. Some of you, probably some of the youngest of you, have a tendency to put a lot of moves in your solutions for homework club. And often it's kind of random, like the game will never go in this direction. Why are we looking at all these moves? There's a few exceptions, some positions that can require long variations, but it's very rare, even at very high level, that's where the difference to decision making comes. So here, if we look at king e7, there's only one move that makes sense, which is bishop takes d7. If white does not play bishop takes d7, then black is just better. Okay, so bishop takes d7, and then the idea is not knight takes d7, knight takes d4. There's a suggestion for white to play bishop a6, and then if after bishop takes a6, castles. But I think the problem will be queen takes a6, queen takes bishop takes, and then you have you don't really have time to take the pawn on b2. My bishop will return to b5, or I will play knight takes d4. So it's a good idea, but king e7 and bishop takes d7. That's an interesting idea. Okay, bishop a6, queen takes a6, bishop takes f2. Okay, so bishop a6, we went too fast. What if white plays knight takes d4? Probably bishop takes b5. Queen takes b5, queen b5, knight b5. Knight e4, rook e d1. And looks to me like white will end up a little bit better. Rook takes d4. Where? So, okay, so bishop a6 also interesting. And let's refer that to the 2-3 things that will go in the Facebook group, and we'll continue there. But king e7, bishop takes d7, rook a8. And then we slow down, because what we are normally very prone to is missing the opponent's moves. So we can immediately think, oh, I go there and he goes there. And very quickly we can see a lot of moves. And this is what comes from youngsters. A lot of long variations where every move you're thinking, if you look a bit closer, like, why there? Ah, because that's the first thing you thought of. And, you know, we've all been there at some point, but we're also moving away from it as we gain more experience, because we'd rather see the right moves, the important options, short term, then we'll see these long variations that never happen. So after rook a8, we're looking for options for white. The first option is, of course, queen b5. And if we have knight takes d7, then we have knight takes d4, e d4, queen b6, knight b6, and rook d4. White has 2 pawns for the 2 pawns and rook against 2 minor pieces, and he will play f3 and consolidate. The b pawn is not a serious target. White has an advantage. And I could imagine this is what I saw during the game. But after queen b5, can we find a better move? And Boris is quick on the trigger. So black also have bishop a6, not reclaiming the piece, but threatening the queen. And after queen takes b6, bishop takes b6, we can see that white's position is a wreck of hanging pieces. Everything hangs. So I'm just going to put it on the board here. Bishop takes d7 and rook a8 and queen b5. And here we can see the effect of slowing down. It's very easy to come back and say, oh, I want to take something. But actually creating more threats with bishop b5, after queen b6, bishop b6, leads to a funny position where black's going to end up material. I think you can consider rook a1, but then I play knight d7. There's not really any way for white to avoid black at least playing knight takes d7 with two minor pieces and an advantage. I'm not sure there's any way for white to save the game actually. Rook e1, we have knight takes e4. My notes does say that black wins. So let's go slowly again here, because we had this idea, and then it's very natural to think, okay, now he has to, and it's those words, now he has to. Here, if we look at the position for a moment, we can see that also white has the right to look for other options than the immediately obvious. So yes, Boris has it, Jeremy has it. This is going to be the last dying moments of the class. So this is your chance to shine. Yoga has it, Shahil has it. I think it's, you just showed up here. I think a lot of people are playing tournaments or traveling or something for now. Lakesh, the problem with bishop c4 is that black still has this very annoying bishop a6 move, and then you're trapped. And Doc, you found the right move as well. At Roseman, and I'm sure everyone, given the time, will find out that white has quite a reasonable option of knight takes d4. Black will take the queen. Of course, we'll look for other options, but they're not really there. Then we have intermediate check. We take back our piece, and we can calculate the variation a bit further with take. Bishop goes here, and this position is a position to play. Black can maybe try to create some problems for white. You know, we want to play g6, h5, try to create some threats against the white king. It's not so easy for white to defend b2 and f2 and g2 and so on. Objectively, the position is probably a draw. There will be some direct draw. I'm not sure how at all. I would assume that from a perspective of decision making, it's not an assumption but an assertion that from the position of decision making, then black should go for this. If white can solve the problems, fine. My guess is the right move here is knight f5. The knight would be very well placed on e3, and queen b2, rook b1 looks dangerous. So that was the extra option in the starting position. I'm going to go back here. So here, this king e7 idea. Of course, human can find it and did and understand it and calculate it, and we did. But when you make a book, then of course, to a great extent, you're not sitting there thinking for an hour in every position yourself, or making an exercise book with many hundred of exercises will be a very, very, very long process. You are to a great extent looking at the engine, and then the engine gives you new information later on. As in this case. And I think it's very fascinating to see that there are always new options, there are always more options in chess. And yeah, Charles is late to the party. Castles, bishop d7, bishop f2 is sort of the main line. I can do like this here, so everyone can have a good overview. But this is the class for today. Thank you very much for attending. I hope I managed to make the point of why slowing down was important. We have these extra options like rook 8, rook d8, and the main line here, the bold line. We have this option of bishop a6 after queen b5. We have this option of knight d4. We have all these extra options that maybe some of them you saw immediately, but I would guess none of them, not all of them. So the importance in good calculation is to slow down. Thank you, Boris. I know that you don't get compliments for free from doctors and from Germans, so I really appreciate it. And I hope, you know, I will build on these points all the way, trying to make it simple. Calculation is about decision making. It's about seeing the things that's right in front of us. So we don't want to miss your options. Therefore, we have to slow down. And we also have to be accurate, which is very, very difficult. So, okay, thank you for your time. Thank you, Chiyashvi. Thank you, Doc, Yoga, Rosman. And someone is saying embarrassing missing a move at some point. No. No, you have to understand this simple and that's easy, and they are not the same thing. It's just not the same thing. We all miss things all the time. If you read a book like Dynamic Decision Making in Chess by Boris Gelfand, you can see which kind of things he misses in his calculation, in his games, and they are also simple things. And we all miss things from time to time, and especially in training, and especially if you are 2, 3 in the morning, I think you should give yourself some slack and not put any emotional value to what you see and what you don't see. Good. Thank you very much. And now I have to find the stop button.